and maybe 40s. Don't shoot the messenger, he added. I'm just saying what the facts are. Google it. It did not go well for Mr. Lemon. First of all, Nikki Haley is absolutely right in pointing out that some of these folks running for office are not in their prime politically. Aaron on the super text line says, we need to start off by defining women. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you have a common sense understanding of women if you're listening to me right now. That said, what are you talking about when you're talking about women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s? As a father, I know exactly what that reference is to. It's a reference to the sexual prime of women. And what I mean by that is the reproductive window that we talk about. The fact that Mr. Lemon thought that was what it means to be in your prime as a woman is really telling. And also a real challenge for somebody that likes to virtue signal. And this is a case of live by the sword, die by the sword. If you are setting yourself up, you're not giving grace to people who misspeak, make misstatements. I mean, politics is a hard business, right? And so people say that in commentary. People mess up. They say things that maybe they shouldn't say. But Mr. Lemon has had a career of, oh, you said this. This is what you mean. These words, this. It has been very literal, very specific. This is where you get some of the term woke, right? Is we are the enlightened. You're not. And so when he speaks like this, it's pretty clear what he's talking about. And I'm not sure whether Nikki Haley's ability to bear a child has much bearing at all on her ability to serve as president of the United States. And that's something that, frankly, Mr. Lemon does need to address is, well, what did you mean by that? And so he comes out and he says, I messed up, which I appreciate. But here's the way he said it. He said, the reference I made to a woman's prime this morning was inartful and irrelevant, as colleagues and loved ones have pointed out, and I regret it. A woman's age doesn't define her either personally or professionally. I have countless women in my life who prove that every day. That sounds sort of like Mitt Romney's binders full of women. I have many lady friends who I say the right thing. Stop. Just stop. I messed up, and that's a good. I like the idea of folks, when they misspeak, just apologizing. Make it right, move on. So I don't think that he deserves to be ridiculed for that, but the idea of that your apology is it's inartful and that we're going to play this sort of, oh, I'm not ageist. I'm not. Okay, let's be honest. Let's talk about this. I've written an article. It was uncomfortable, but talking about the age of politicians in light of their cognitive capacity to do the work. And that's something that is relevant to the job, does matter, and for most adults. And again, this is a generality, but it's something that Nikki Haley was, I think, pointing out is the older you get, the more challenging certain cognitive functions can become. That's not the case for everybody. I'm not saying everybody that's in their 80s has cognitive challenges. That's inappropriate. But the science suggests that your mental plasticity, your ability to adjust to what's going on, process information, like the science on this is pretty well established, that you experience cognitive changes as you age. That is relevant to the job. And I do think age plays a role in politics. So this sort of swing the other way of saying age doesn't matter at all, I think is unfair. I think it does matter. And I think this is something that America is experiencing right now. Let's take it in a different way. The older you get, the more out of touch you become. That's happening to me at 41. My boys use words at the kitchen table. I'm like, what does that word mean? My oldest son, my 13-year-old, said that my 11-year-old has Riz. Riz. I'm like, at the dinner table, I'm like, Riz, what is this? Apparently, this is, if you're good with the ladies, you've got the Riz. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And here I am at 41. And so I look at somebody that could easily be my grandfather. And it's a different life context. You grew up with different realities. There's nothing wrong with that. But if our focus is going to be on working families and like normal America, like the median, if you will, of our country to try to figure out policy going forward, then that's what we actually need to do. We need to be very, very serious about that and not play games with, age doesn't matter. And I think that's Haley's point. She's like, there's some old white dudes that have been in this game for a long time, and maybe let's try something a little fresh, somebody with a little different context. So was Don Lemon wrong? Yeah, of course. It was a dumb thing to say. But Haley's point about, man, when we have the people running our country as some of the oldest people in the country, literally like far exceeding the current life expectancy, should we maybe not ask questions and say, can we get a little bit of a younger team in there to bring some more diverse perspectives? And I get it. I understand that those folks who are retired or sort of on the back nine of their career and lives, they have time to do politics. Right now, if you told me, I need you to take out your day and go run and go represent people in Congress, man, that would be a big sacrifice because I like coaching teams in Nolensville. I like being a football coach. I like coaching wrestling. I like going to the batting cage with my boys, and you give up a lot of that. So I understand the sacrifices that people make in running for office when they're in that sort of family age, when you got kids in the house, teens in the house. That's a very, very big deal. But some of us need to do that, right? We need people in that demographic because I want people in Washington that know what my life is like, that understand that and aren't afraid to say, is this good for families that have kids in the house? Well, somebody who's older, who's a grandparent can ask that, but their context for what it's like right now, it's a remember when. My parents are a great example. They love their grandkids, but they will tell me, man, I don't have to pay that food bill. You want to talk about inflation? Talk about my grocery bill. This week I have 5 guys in my house, and it's not a hamburger joint. It's literally 5. I've got 3 teenagers and 2 younger sons in my home eating food. And oh my goodness, I have a very different perspective on inflation. And I know those of you who are doing the same thing have a different perspective on inflation than somebody who's saying, I enjoy my grandkids. And that's not being mean. It's just true. And so I want people there who kind of get where I am in life. And I, on the same note, get that, hey, if I'm a senior and I have a different set of issues, I want people there that represent me. I agree. But we've got to have more diversity than we have right now. The average age cannot be as high as it is in political representation. That was Haley's point. That's what Lemon radically fumbled on. But the next thing we need to talk about is Nikki Haley's presidential run. What is it? And when we come back from the break, I want to get into this and say, okay, she's making a point about needing some fresh perspectives in politics. Is Trump playing this right? Is he engaging her right? When we come back, that's what we're going to get into. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7. And we're back. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on the Matt Murphy Show. We're still trying to find Matt. Apparently, he's talking to the governor, doing some important things like that. And so they just found whoever they could drag in here. I'm Cameron Smith. I write for the Tennessean for AL.com. I am a groupie of Thanks over in Franklin. If you don't know Thanks, you don't know about expressing gratitude. We'll get to that a little bit later. But gratitude in what you do matters in politics, matters in everything. And so I want to be real clear when we're talking about some of this stuff. Check your outrage. We'll get to this in a little bit. But don't let this stuff that we're talking about, politics, what's happening, throw you off your game. Because that's the drug, right? That's what they get you hooked on. Because if a politician knows that you're angry or upset, they won, right? Because then you'll say, oh, Mr. Politician, please help me. You're my only hope. If a politician is your only hope, you are in trouble. Just mark my words on that. Saviors do not come from Washington, D.C. You may need to know Jesus. In fact, I would suggest getting to know Jesus. That's a savior. Somebody you voted for and won a popularity contest, not a savior. And we need to kind of keep that in mind. If you want to join the conversation, Super Talk text line 615-737-9986. Check out the feed on YouTube, Facebook. Again, you do so at your own peril. You have to look at my face. It's covered with some fur, so that's somewhat helpful. Before we move on to the Nikki Haley tactics thing, I want to talk a little bit about CNN's response. Chris Licht opened his editorial call this morning saying that the remarks had left him disappointed. And that he said, quote, his remarks were upsetting, unacceptable, and unfair to his co-host, and ultimately a huge distraction to the great work of this organization. Okay. I think at this point, Lemon's issued an apology. He knows better. He goofed up. But this is the threat of playing the virtue signaling games. When you do this, when you start playing this game of magic words and magic phrases, and then you say the wrong thing, you get crucified publicly. And that's what's going to happen to Mr. Lemon, is he's going to experience a serious discomfort. He probably needs some sensitivity training. He will need to lay prostrate and be run over several times by women in very high heels. There's got to be some sort of commensurate punishment here. But again, if you just try to be an individual of character and you say, I'm going to be sincere and genuine, and when I mess up, and I'm sorry, and if I offended you. But this era of mass offense where, and I've actually got a piece forthcoming in the Tennessean talking about this. And I'll give you a little teaser before it comes out, and I'm sure Matt and I will talk about it in the future. But basically, for Black History Month, my son, who is black, said, Dad, will you wear this T-shirt with me? I've got my T-shirt, you got your T-shirt, and your T-shirt says, Black history is American history. Factually accurate statement. And I started immediately in my head, went to, well, what about all the people I might offend? Like, what if somebody thinks I'm misappropriating Black History Month? What if somebody thinks I'm woke? What if somebody and I started doing this, and I just was like, what if I just listen to my son and love him and stand with him because he's a real person in front of me? And when we start worrying about the offenses of people who we don't actually know, who don't exist because of social media, we get in a bad way real fast, and that's what Don Lemon's about to find out. So Nikki Haley, what she said that prompted this whole exchange was actually very interesting. She said, and I quote, "We're ready to move past the stale ideas and faded names of the past, and we're more than ready for a new generation to lead us into the future." I know. Political talking speak. Hang on with me for a minute. She called for mandatory mental competency tests for politicians over 75 years old. I think of a lot of you listening right now to the sound of my voice probably think that's a good idea. I would love to see that test. I would love to know what we're going with, and when the reports come back, how those will be used. So let me give y'all a little bit of background about Nikki Haley. Some of y'all know this, some of you don't. Bear with me. I want to make sure that we kind of know what we're talking about. She was the governor of South Carolina from 2011 to 2017, and then she became Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. So Trump gave her a shot, right? She didn't really have any foreign policy experience, but she's a very smart, very talented woman, like very capable generally. And so served well under Trump. And then it started to get weird. She was critical of Trump following the January 6th attacks. She said he let us down and that he has no future in the Republican Party. She said, quote, "I don't think he's going to be in the picture. I don't think he can. He's fallen so far." Okay. Later in October, she said, "We need him in the Republican Party. I don't want us to go back to the days before Trump." Okay. We're playing she's clearly somebody that understands politics and sees the winds of change. We saw this a little bit with Kevin McCarthy after January 6th, where he was very much like, really? Like, what did Trump do? Come on. And then they sort of mended fences and they go forward, right? So she's kind of back and forth on this stuff. And then what's really interesting here is that Trump says, okay, yeah, she called me. Okay, I said, do what you need to do. But then he kind of goes after her on Truth Social and lists a bunch of things, like really starts to attack her. Now, notably, and one of you pointed this out, 8178 pointed this out, he didn't give her a nickname yet. Ron DeSanctimonious has a nickname. Nikki Haley didn't get a nickname, but he did go after her. And, you know, kind of even given her a backhanded compliment. Like, I told Nikki, this is a quote from Trump, "I told Nikki to follow her heart, not her ambition or belief. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. She's polling at 1%. Not a bad start." Okay. But here's where I think he's making the mistake, is he's going to need some friends. I know some of y'all don't think that that's the case, but he's absolutely going to need some friends when it comes to another campaign. He doesn't think that he has to, but how's he going to get the numbers? He needs his populist base. We've talked about this on the show. You know, those folks are driving a lot of the Republican Party right now, but he's going to need to add to that number if he wants to win in the general. And so when we come back from the break, we're about to have to break, but when we come back, we'll talk about what that means tactically, whether Trump's playing this right by kind of poking fun at her, or whether he should be saying, hey, let's work out a deal. I'm Cameron Smith, in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11, or jumping into energy stocks or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors, because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Welcome back. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy. If you want to follow the conversation on Twitter, at @DCameronSmith, you can yell at me and tell me where I'm wrong. You can join us on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. We're getting reports that Matt Murphy, it was spray tans, now it may be prison. We're big if true. There's a chance Matt may join us on his own show as a guest. So I'm very excited about that. I mean, the possibility of having him in a different chair, and then we can prove that I'm just better looking. It's not the lighting. And that's really what I'm looking forward to talking about. So let's put this Nikki Haley thing to bed. Let's finish talking about this. Trump poking at Nikki Haley and saying, yeah, 1%er, like you're just, nah, you're bad. You like Paul Ryan, other stuff. It's a bad play. It's just a bad play. Because the concern for Trump in the primary is Ron DeSantis. We all know that. DeSantis isn't a different base than Trump. That's what people they're missing in this conversation. Trump has, the people talk about the Trump's populist base. That's true. The Trump base, and what I mean by that, we're talking the acolytes, the Trump can do no wrong. Those folks are a small subset of that populist base. There are plenty of folks, a lot of listeners to this station, who say, you know what? The fact that politics has been geared towards corporations and the elite and doing what's good for them as opposed to what's good for the average American, I'm tired of that. I agree with you. I absolutely agree. However, that does not mean that you have that belief and then Trump is the only politician that you can go with. The Trump acolytes, the people, and you've heard this all the time, you've heard it on this station. Well, whenever Trump does something that's less ideal or less than awesome, and you say, well, he's getting bad advice, okay? And like anything Trump does, it doesn't matter. You just explain why it's actually not bad or not stupid or not anything negative, right? You're a Trump acolyte. You're just saying, I'm going to vote for him. It doesn't matter. Whatever he does, he's the best. He's my guy. That's a perfectly fine political position. It's also a relatively small portion of the Republican Party. The populist base is, however, huge. DeSantis is going after that populist base. He absolutely is. He's not saying, well, I want to make my own acolytes. I want to make my own little DeSantis land. It's, hey, Trump's onto something. I learned a lot from this guy, and I think I can represent these people better than he can. So he's making that play. That's what he's going after. As governor, the stuff he's done with Disney, the stuff on immigration, if you think that he's doing that stuff by accident or he's just sort of doing the next thing, you got to be kidding yourself. He is absolutely going after Trump's base. Okay, so Trump and DeSantis are competing for the same base. Enter Nikki Haley. Is she polling at 1%? Sure. Is she on the radar for a viable presidential candidate right now? Probably not. But what do I know about her? She's competent. She's capable. She's talented. And she appeals to a much different group of Republican voters than sort of that populist base voter that's going to like DeSantis or going to like Trump. And so by attacking Haley and attacking DeSantis and frankly doing what he did so effectively in the 2016 election, that's giving him the ability, that's giving Trump sort of the recycle. He's saying, well, what worked in 2016 will work now. No, it won't. It won't. That, to me, is Trump's biggest error right now. He's just trying to repeat what he's already done. Meanwhile, DeSantis is able to look over there and say, hey, Nikki Haley, how you doing? This Trump guy, man, he's coming after us. He sure is bad. Man, I just hate that. Hey, why don't you be my running mate? Why don't we do this together? You'll get a shot. We're both young. You got opportunity. I got opportunity. We can open up the conservative doors for America, create new opportunity, get rid of this sort of angry politics and just be awesome. We can be these fighters. We can do really well. Okay. Now what you going to do, Trump? Now what's the play? Because you got somebody coming for your populist base in DeSantis, who incidentally is extremely popular. Meanwhile, you're in retirement. You're at Mar-a-Lago playing golf, which is fine. Nobody's blaming you for that, but you're not able to add to your track record. You're not able to do something more than what you've already done. Meanwhile, DeSantis is able to say, hey, I'm still governing in Florida. I don't have time for this back and forth. Haley putting her marker out there saying, hey, I'm somebody credible. And now, man, a DeSantis-Haley ticket, that is, not only would it crush Joe Biden, just to be blunt, it's got a very real chance of walking away with a Republican primary. And I'm looking at the same numbers you are, folks. I mean, if you think right now, if you're looking and you don't have your head in the sand, then DeSantis is certainly viable. Trump is Trump. He's viable. Trump's play right now is very clear. I want this field as big as it can be so I can repeat 2016. That's his play. That's the way to go. But if he doesn't court a Nikki Haley or somebody, a Tim Scott, or somebody that brings some energy and youth to the ticket and sort of is the future of the Republican Party, because I'm telling you at this point, Joe mentions Kristi Noem. I think Kristi Noem could be a great running mate too. The challenge is Trump has to have someone on the ticket that's the future of the Republican Party, and that's going to be really hard for him. It's going to be hard for his ego. Because at this point, we've got to admit, he will be as old as Joe Biden when Joe Biden ran. Like, remember when Trump was like, he's too old, he's too old. Yeah, okay, fine. But Trump's old, so he's going to have to point to the future, and he's not going to like that. He's just not. And so we're going to have a situation where he needs to have a Haley, a Noem, a Scott, somebody like that on the ticket, not a Mike Pence. No offense to Mike Pence, but nobody's really going to say, that's the future I'm excited about. He's a great guy, good policy guy, seems to be a man of high character, but you got to show me something else. You got to give me something useful, and I think a tactical play with Haley would have been very smart for Trump. I think he's missing it. I think DeSantis is absolutely going to walk in. There's some gentleman who has entered the studio. He looks mentally competent. I don't know if deranged is the right word.
It's my two-shot on here. My two-shot. Hello.
Welcome, Matt Murphy, to the Matt Murphy Show.
Hey, what's going on? How are y'all? Hey, Cameron.
Hi. It's weird seeing you at this angle.
It's odd seeing you at this angle as well. I'm just here to see if my two-shot looks better from this camera. Do I look at all better from this camera? That's the big question.
We need to pause this radio show.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you busy?
We need to pause it for
the
Matt Murphy vanity project here.
Hey, Cameron, thanks for filling in today.
Hey, no problem.
I just wanted to jump in on my own show. It's fun.
He's watching me. He was staring through the glass, looking at me and saying, what is he doing?
And for those confused, why is Matt off but Matt there? I'm actually working for Brian this afternoon on the drive. We'll be out at Bold Patriot Brewing Company this afternoon, 3 until 7 o'clock. Please come out and make me feel like you love me.
What are you going to talk about today? What's the thing, man?
Mainly you. No, actually, we've got Governor Bill Lee coming on the show. He will be on around 3:35 this afternoon. Excited about that. Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton will be on at 5 o'clock.
Do you like suit Sexton or casual Sexton better?
I thought he was really good casual when he came in studio. He had the golf top on, looked like he was about to hit the course. I liked that. It was the first time I'd seen him without tie. I did note, there was a little bit of controversy. I didn't tell him this at the time. I want to tell you this story.
Okay.
So he invited me to a private event dealing with crime in Tennessee. It was an off-the-record event so that prosecutors, DAs, sheriffs from around the state would feel free to speak openly about it. And he asked me to go, and he asked me if I would, just keep the specifics of the conversation off the record, and I agreed to do that. And I went, and I visited these guys. It was at the Capitol. So I was wearing a suit, and before I got there, I spilled one of my drinks on my tie, so I just took the tie off.
Yeah.
So I was wearing a suit, no tie. So flash forward to the last time Cameron was on with us, and he was telling me the story of the newly sworn-in representative who I think is replacing a representative who passed away, sadly. And this guy who campaigned all of his campaigns, he's in a suit, he's in a tie, he's dressed a tie. Now, on the floor of the speakers in the House of Representatives in the state of Tennessee, you are expected to wear a coat and tie. And so this newly sworn-in Democrat decided to make a political statement, and he wore some traditional, I think it was some traditional African garb.
Sure.
Which is all well and good, and no one said anything to him. But the speaker made clear, he said, look, I'm just not going to call on you. If you don't have the respect for the body, I'm not going to call on you. And all I could think about was me standing in that meeting where everybody's got a tie on, and I got no tie on. And I think he was looking right through me.
But it's Nashville, man.
I know. That's what I mean. Everything's jeans and boots, right?
So actually, this is my. I think Cameron Sexton is a very competent, capable politician and somebody we're going to hear a lot about in the coming years. I think the best thing he can do is find his inner Lamar Alexander and kind of be a little chill, I mean, I think that's something.
With the flannel?
Yeah, maybe not necessarily flannel, but like the idea of right now, you need to be yourself. You need to be authentic in politics because there's so much media around you. Our friend Andy Ogles is finding this out, that authenticity and who you really are, if you say things that aren't true, if you dress a way that's not you, if you do this stuff, ultimately somebody's going to find the receipts and say, hey, wait a minute.
I'll say a lot more about the Andy deal on the drive this afternoon, but I'll say this.
How'd you like that setup?
Thank you very much. One of the reasons that George Santos, I understand that's an issue if you make up out of whole cloth your entire past in order to get elected.
Right.
But I, as much as anything, blame the local media in that district, and you blame George Santos for being willing to lie. You blame local media in that district for not digging enough to get this information prior to the election, but then you put not blame, but the onus on the individuals that are going to go and vote in 2024. Absolutely. And the expectation is they'll take care of it, which is why I didn't really like what Mitt Romney had to say about it. The voters will decide that. And if Mitt Romney had looked at George Santos and said, don't get comfortable, pal, because the voters are going to kick your butt out of this body because, you know what, they know that you're big. I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But the reason that it doesn't give me that much heartburn is because George Santos is just your typical politician on an enormous amount of steroids.
Right.
Politicians always polish, and I'm going to go over the concept of puffery today. You know it well. You went through law school. You know what puffery is.
Oh, yeah.
Politicians are as guilty as anyone at puffing themselves up, puffing the resume up. But here's the deal. For those that want to defend Andy, and I'm not here to slam on the guy. I'm sure he's as conservative as the day is long. I wish I could talk to him more on my radio show, but he's chosen not to make himself available to friendly media. Why in the hell would he make himself available to Channel 5 when they're engaged in a hit piece on him? Cameron, if I told you I've studied law, you would say, okay. If I told you I was a lawyer, am I telling the truth?
No.
I'm not.
No.
If I said, you know what, I've done a lot of research in the field of medicine versus I'm a doctor.
Big difference.
It's a big difference. And so for those that want to defend Andy, you have to defend the fact that he was calling himself an economist, and that means something.
Yeah.
That indicates to the listener, and it's intentional, that you have studied and are degreed in economics.
Matt's just throwing things around here, y'all. It's like karate over there.
I was accused of throwing it, so I might as well go ahead. Anyway, so, and once again, that's not a slam on Andy. I mean, it's not something that's not overcomable, but I think you might want to look at what your media strategy is right now.
Yeah.
And ask yourself if maybe it wouldn't be a better strategy to be more open to conversing with the people of your district through platforms like this one.
Sure.
In a way that they get to know the real you so that people like Phil Williams can't mischaracterize who the real you is.
Yeah, and I think this is what we see across the board right now, but this is my point about receipts. Like, if you're embellishing even as a politician right now, and it's not you, right? If you say, I've done much public policy research on this topic, somebody could say, like, well, I looked and I haven't seen anything you've published. Did you mean you Googled it? Like, and that's what happens right now is folks are, actually, I don't think I believe you. Let me look. And then they can just search and realize, oh, you just said some stuff. And that hurts you politically. But
it took me a long time, and I think it's a level of maturity that I admit that I'm proud of. When I first started in this career, I was petrified of saying, I don't know. Yeah. Because I thought that was a sign of weakness. I thought that a talk radio show host, because I grew up on Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh knew everything. Rush Limbaugh was never caught with his pants down, not having every bit of knowledge about the subject at hand at his fingertips. So I was petrified of that. It took a certain amount of doing this to recognize it's okay not to know. As long as you're inquisitive and want to learn and want to get to the bottom of the truth about any given subject, it's okay. It's okay not to be an economist. It's okay not to be a member of law enforcement. That's okay, Andy. You got elected. You're a congressman. You're a very, very important individual. You don't have to puff yourself up anymore.
Well, one of us also needs to pay attention to the clock, and I've been told that
I'm not the host.
We need to take
just
a break.
Guest, pal.
Well, I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy while looking at Matt Murphy on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Howdy, y'all. I'm Cameron, filling in for Matt, who just came on his own show. I mean, it's just like he just couldn't trust me with his baby. And it's a big problem. We're working through it.
Because you're ruining it.
I have people on the Super Talk text line saying Matt needs to go. He's got Brian's show. Why is
Well, I mean, that's like every day. They say that to me every day. Why would they not say that to you?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
All right, I'm gonna leave you be.
No, I like having somebody here. It's weird staring into the void of media. With
How about this Super Talk? How about this Super Talk TV? Huh?
Let's check it out. We're going to talk about Fetterman and other stuff coming back on Super Talk 99.7.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. In Ohio, air quality and safe drinking water still a main concern more than 2 weeks after a train derailed with hazardous chemicals.
7.5 miles of the Ohio River were found to be contaminated following the February 3rd East Palestine derailment, leading to the death of thousands of fish. The Environmental Protection Agency has been monitoring 5 municipal water supply wells in the area. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine Friday.
The experts tell me that these monitors are coming back clean. Clean for contaminants of concern associated with the train derailment.
But those who get water from a private well encouraged to use bottled water until the source is considered safe. Dave Packer, ABC News.
In Tennessee, 5 former Memphis police officers charged in the murder of Tyree Nichols last month appeared in court today. They're accused of beating Nichols during an encounter. ABC's Steve Osunsami is outside Shelby County Criminal Court.
This hearing did not last long at all. Their lawyers entered their pleas. They were all wearing black masks, so you really couldn't see their faces. It was really hard to see any of them, but they all entered pleas of not guilty to the judge.
The next hearing set for May 1st. Law enforcement sounding the alarm on child predators using social media to target kids. TikTok says it's now working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. ABC's Rebecca Jarvis has more.
TikTok says they have a team working with U.S. law enforcement agencies and report any content with child sex abuse to the NCMEC. Over 22,000 reports in 2020. That number jumping to nearly 155,000 the following year.
In Pakistan, police say 3 people are dead after terrorists attacked Karachi police headquarters. A government official says all 3 terrorists have been killed. 1 of them blew himself up, and 2 wearing suicide vests were killed by police. A total of 11 people were injured. You're listening to ABC News.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the second hour of the Matt Murphy Show. I successfully removed Matt from his own show. He came in like a babysitter wanting to check on me and making sure I wasn't telling people about his spray tan and whisker braiding and all the weird things he's into. But we had a good little chat. He's got The Drive with Brian Wilson. He's filling in. And we talked briefly about some of the material that's going to be on his show. Specifically, people having the receipts on politicians. Andy Ogles finds himself at the on the end of an unflattering report, and Matt's going to talk about that in a little more detail. If you want to join the conversation, Superdog text line 615-737-9986. If you're into the telephonics, you can call in. Same number. You can also join us on YouTube or Facebook, where we have cameras and ring lights and other things that are shining on me. Yay. Let's talk John Fetterman. This is a big deal. He had, as everybody knew, during the campaign, had some serious health issues, suffered a stroke, was in recovery on that when he was elected to the Senate, defeating Dr. Oz. He checked himself into Walter Reed. He did not check himself in necessarily for symptoms of his stroke. In fact, the reports are that aspect has been ruled out. But he said he needed treatment for clinical depression. I want to be real clear about this because this is a tough issue, and there's a tendency to go on the attack. It's politics, right? That's what we do. We attack. We say, other team, let's get after it. Okay, here's a guy who's being honest and saying, hey, as a result of some of the symptoms of my stroke, I'm just not in a great mental place, and it's pretty serious and serious enough for me to seek care. In that respect, we should not poke fun at that. It's really easy, and our culture's getting better at this. But as somebody who has family members who've had some mental health challenges, who has seen the effects of this and losing my brother to suicide and other stuff that's going on, we should never take this stuff lightly. The mental impacts, we were talking about this with Matt and I were about the psychology of bullying and sort of social media and the online. It's really easy when there's a physical injury, right? It's one of the reasons that we restrict cigarettes is because of the physical harm to your lungs. It's easy to demonstrate. Nobody wants to have black lungs, right? But when it comes to mental health, there's a real stigma. Is that real? Is that something that we're getting better at it, but we shouldn't take it lightly. I'm glad that Fetterman had the ability to say, I'm in such a bad place, I need to seek professional help because I am that depressed. His office, his chief of staff said on Monday, John was evaluated by Dr. Brian P. Monahan, the attending physician of Congress. He recommended inpatient care at Walter Reed. John agreed, and he's receiving treatment on a voluntary basis. I hope that he gets the care that he needs. Jeff Greenfield in Politico said this: the candor so far displayed by Fetterman and his staff will need to continue. Can he find the conditions he needs to heal from depression as a sitting member of the Senate? Does the combination of depression and the fallout from a stroke pose a special set of difficulties? Or can the advances in treating depression, along with the far more accepting climate, mean that, as his office promised, he will soon be back to himself? I think Jeff makes some good points and something that we have to consider. Working and serving, I should say, in the United States Senate or in the House of Representatives or in any legislative body, you are there on behalf of other folks, right? You are casting votes. You are doing things that are quite impactful. And with the narrow margins that we have right now in the House and Senate, the ability to cast a vote absolutely matters. And we've had politicians who are out of have been out for office for extended periods. We've had other folks with strokes that it took a while. We've had folks with physical injuries that they miss votes. Missing a vote here and there is not a problem. That's the reality. The bigger issue is when can you not serve the people who elected you? And what are the implications of that? And that's something, and we'll see how this goes, but if he's out of office for an extended period of time, what does that mean? What does it mean for the state of Pennsylvania? In Pennsylvania, the way it works is the governor, who's a Democrat, would be able to appoint somebody, but not for the remainder of the 6-year term. It's basically the remainder of the term to the next general election. So essentially, whoever was appointed would serve out the rest of the first 2 years of Fetterman's term, and then ultimately would run in a special election for the remainder. The challenge that this poses is anybody who says something like that and says, well, what's next? Oh, well, that's horrible. No, it's not. We should be sensitive. We shouldn't be jerks about it. We shouldn't, wish him ill. We should wish him recovery. But the practical realities of the position are these are extremely demanding positions. I've seen it firsthand. I've worked as an attorney in the United States Senate, and the rigors of the job are significant. You are walking all over the place. You are going from the floor back to the office, to the committee room, to an interview, to a meeting. And you are going constantly. It is not an easy life for somebody that's trying to recover either physically or mentally. It is very, very taxing. And I know that's not a popular thing for a conservative to say. We're supposed to say, like, these folks don't do any. No, they do a lot. Particularly on the federal level where being a senator or a congressman is a full-time job. Those folks go. Or they get replaced. Because the expectation is that your senator or your congressman will be very public, will speak to every issue, will talk to you, will reach out to you. And if you don't, you get bounced. That's some of what Matt's talking about with Representative Ogles is, man, you got to have a solid media play and a media strategy to connect to the people that put you in office. And if you don't engage and do well with that, you're not going to be there very long. And so somebody like Fetterman, who is suffering from a number of essentially ailments, both physically and mentally, needs the ability to recover, but ultimately he's the one that has to make the decision. He's the one that has to say, am I fit to serve? Am I not? And we can speculate and we can do all those things, but it's something that we need to consider as a matter of public policy of what should be the threshold for, hey, I need a minute. I need to recover, because the truth is we want our politicians to be able to do that. We want our leaders to be able to do that. If they need to, recover from a stroke, a car crash, we need an ability to kind of respond to that, because we don't want to be without representation, but we also want to have representatives that can be mentally and physically capable of doing the job. And sometimes just the exhaustion. Some of these folks who have done this and they're career politicians, I don't see how. It's not we think of it as sometimes a glamorous job. It's not. Somebody who can do it for a very, very long time is just extremely resilient. And I wish Fetterman the best in his recovery. Don't be a jerk about that. But whether he's going to be able to continue to serve and what the implications are politically there, it's fair to raise questions, because obviously Pennsylvania remains a competitive state. Oz was not a great candidate, but a good candidate versus a placeholder could have real implications for Democrats. And so we need to watch that story. We need to continue to engage there. And it was actually Hannah Cox from Base Politics that got me kind of thinking about, we need to, and I'm going to keep saying this, we need to chill the outrage. This sort of, I'm so upset, I'm so angry, fine. Particularly for those of us who claim to be Christians. The Bible's pretty clear on anger. Be angry, but don't sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. This isn't something we hold on to, right? But I'm concerned about what I perceive as CBS. I'm going to call this conservative butthole syndrome. It's where being angry isn't of itself part of the thing, right? You have to prove that you're mean. Hannah Cox called out Matt Walsh for this, saying, hey, man, make your point. Make your argument, but then to just be cruel and derogatory and trying to punch people in the face, I get it. I mean, it's an entertaining shtick. But we need to stop. If you look around, first of all, it doesn't make you a fighter. Like this notion that you say things that are shocking on social media or in columns or on radio makes you a fighter is dumb. No one has ever considered that a fighter. No one has ever won a fight by having very, very strong opinions. So we need to understand that and not play games with that. Like this whole, well, that's a fighter. No, it's not. It's just somebody that's directionally loud and impolite. You don't need to be a doormat and just like not have a point of view. And we've seen that in politics. But the idea of I'm going to make my case. I'm going to explain why I think you're wrong. We're going to act in good faith. But then I'm going to try to hurt you. I'm going to try to tell you that you're a bad human. You're evil. You're terrible. You're gross. You're nasty. You're ugly. And your mom's fat. We don't need to do that. We need to stop because how we win, if you're a conservative who wants to win, then how you win matters, right? And being able to say, hey, I'm going to fight for these policies. I'm going to win. And man, this woke mantra of magic words and you have to be saying all the right things all the time, I'm not for that. But I'm also not interested in hurting people. I'm not trying to go after people and be cruel. And there's a big difference between standing your ground and saying, I feel very strongly about this. I want to win elections. I'm not going to play weird games where I like clap for myself as I lose one election after another. But the truth is, and it's going to be hard to hear, we're not exactly crushing it on the electoral standpoint with the current status quo. We're just not winning the elections we want to win with this sort of CBS conservative butthole syndrome approach. It's not working. It's bad. It might make you feel good in a primary, but it's not working where it really, really matters. And so ask this question to yourself. Who are your friends? Who do you appreciate? What does your neighborhood think about you? What do the people in your community, how do you engage them? Here's a good one that I want every listener to think about. If you can hear the sound of my voice, think about this. Do people refuse to talk politics with you? Do they refuse to engage you, or they're like, ugh, man, I don't want to have you over for dinner. We can talk about the weather. We can talk about other stuff, but we don't want to talk about politics. Well, if that's the case, you're not helping us win. And that really, really, really matters. This isn't about, oh, we need to be moderates. No, you don't. You don't need to be moderate at all in terms of your policies, in terms of your ideas. But you shouldn't be moderate in terms of your character either. You should have high standards for character, high standards how you treat each other, and be able to influence and win. This is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, folks. We've got to be able to do that. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit of a context with the city of Nolensville, town government, that type of thing when we come back from the break, because I think we sometimes lose sight of the ball. We want to talk about, Joe Biden and all the weird things he does, but we lose sight of the ball right here at home. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7. right, folks, we're back. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy. If you're wondering who the weird guy is in the blue hoodie, it's me. If you're following us on YouTube or Facebook, it's exciting to be able to see the radio people because unfortunately many of us were not gifted with the great face. It's more the voice thing, but now you get to see. I am wearing my Nolensville High School hoodie. I am very excited that folks from Nolensville are listening. On the SuperTalk text line, it's 615-737-9986. 3641 made a good point. I'm not trying to scold conservatives about everybody's this way, that suffering from conservative butthole syndrome, CBS. But some of us have decided that that's the way to get what we want. And so what I'm speaking to is to those people who say, hey, I think I should just get real angry. And you see this. You see the outrage. The idea that we can't see this is strange. I gave you a perfect example of Mr. Walsh and sort of some of his approach to the issues. And that level of anger and cruelty doesn't do anything useful. So I don't want folks to feel like I'm coming after you. Well, if you're angry, it's okay to be upset about the way things are in politics. It absolutely is, because this is ridiculous. Some of the things that we're seeing, the situation at the border, the sort of mangling of the economy in terms of the COVID shutdowns and inflation and, oh man. I mean, we can just go down the list and say, hey, here's a bunch of things that you could be upset about and frankly should be. But don't let that poison the well. Don't let that poison you so that when you interact with other people, they don't want to be around you, because then your policy solutions, the things that you support, the things that you and I support, limited government, individual responsibility, more freedom, less bureaucracy. Think about that from a free market perspective. We talk about free markets a lot. If I'm telling somebody government is not the answer, what I'm really saying is we are, right? The people are. We can govern. We can govern ourselves. We can be responsible. We know how to treat each other. We can create better outcomes than somebody using the heavy hand of government can. Well, what does that require? It requires trust. You've got to trust me that I'm not going to take advantage of you and I'm not going to hurt you, and that in our society, we may disagree, but we can work through that, and we don't need government to come in and sort it out for us, right? And right now, the attitude of a lot of folks, particularly in conservative land, is where we kind of agreed, hey, folks, we are limited government. We want less government. Now it's, well, I kind of want to use government to make you do what I want. And that is a road we should not go down. It's very concerning. And frankly, it's what brings me to the discussion about my beloved town of Nolensville. I love this place. I love the people there. Man, the kids. So some of y'all know this, that I have a foster son who's wonderful, and he's a junior at Nolensville High School, and the kids there, and I know kids can be rough. The kids at Nolensville High School have embraced my son with open arms. They have supported him. They have helped him. They have been there from him. The teachers, the coaches, going down the list. I get emotional thinking about it because my community has treated my family so well. It's why I want to give back. It's why I want to coach. It's why I want to do the wrestling, do the football, find community engagement, do stuff with my neighbors, be in the real world with them, because they are some fantastic people in Nolensville. But I've seen this even in Nolensville. We have the Nolensville 411, and some of the things people say are just, wow. It's here's what I want, and the rest of y'all are evil, stupid, and want to do bad things. Well, no, don't do that. There's just such a temptation, and this is why Josh Hawley and folks have, started talking about, well, should we age restrict social media? we're not very good at handling the online presence. It's everywhere, right? It's this, I don't have to look you in the eye when I say mean things about you, so I can say whatever I want. And man, I'm guilty of it too. I see it. I'm tempted. I'm like, well, I'll take a pot shot at this politician. I don't know them personally, so okay, I'll just say whatever I want. That's wrong. And I do it. I try to do it less. I'm trying to sort of rein it back in because it's just so easy. But when I see it on the Nolensville 411 Facebook group, and I know what you're talking about, I know all y'all know what I'm talking about. All of y'all know these little 411 groups for your community. And then the people on them talk like just awfully about other folks. They disparage, defame. And I understand a lot of it's directed at public figures and politicians and all these folks. And those folks need to be able to handle it. You shouldn't be in those positions if you get your healing. If you're an elected official who gets your feelings hurt easily, you shouldn't do it. You just shouldn't. Because we need that criticism. We need that kind of thing to be there. But how you do it matters. So 5385 says First Amendment. Yes, I will support. As somebody who's been sued by politicians for telling the truth, I got sued by a state school board member in Alabama because I told the truth. It was something that she wrote on video. And I just said, I don't think that's a really good policy. And I got sued. So I will always support the First Amendment. I don't think that's the issue here. And so, and some of the criticism, and when I use the example of Matt Walsh, it's not because I don't agree with Matt Walsh. Matt's right on a lot of topics. I don't think it's necessary to go and be mean. You don't have to. That's not truth telling. It's not being too loud. You're just being cruel to somebody for fun. And that's where I'm just saying, maybe not. I hear okay, well, we need multiple approaches. We need somebody who's more like me, who's a little bit more like, hey, come to the table. Like I learned the Reagan approach. It's like, who can we get to the table? How can we find people we agree with? We don't agree on everything, but we'll get there. I want to keep talking about this because I think this is really, really important. But Bell is giving me the breaking stick sign, which means we've got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11 or jumping into energy stocks or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors, because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or you can call 615-851-1950.
And we're back, folks. Man, this is really interesting. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy, and we've been talking about sort of the how we engage in terms of character, in terms of should we be angry? If we're angry, okay, we all got that we were upset about some of the political stuff, but how are we fighting back against the policies and ideas we don't like or agree with? Should we just kind of mush out and just say, well, I want to be a good guy. I want to be Mr. Rogers, and just kind of get run over by the culture? No. Unequivocally no. I would never ask anybody listening to this radio station to simply go along to get along and support some of the absolutely brain dead, ridiculous policies that we're seeing from folks we disagree with. But one, it doesn't mean they're my enemy. And two, I need to win some of those to win those policy battles, to change policy, to win and govern. That's what I keep hearing. And I want to address some of the comments, because y'all are doing a great job. Super Talk text line 615-737-9986 of kind of feedback in both directions. I got a lot of folks that are saying, hey, you should never put anybody down, who are sort of in the camp that I'm talking about, which is, hey, character matters. Don't lose your own character to engage in a political fight. And then there's other folks who are saying, well, I hear you, but you got to fight fire with fire. Okay, well, my brother-in-law's a fireman, and to the best of my knowledge, the house fires that they put out, they typically use water. Fire versus fire just burns everything. And if that's the culture and world you want for your kids, I'm just going to disagree with you. It doesn't mean you're evil or you're terrible. It just means that we have a difference of opinion. And so I see that, But what we're convinced, and many of us are convinced of, is that we're in a war we can't win by being nice guys and gals. Okay, if we're taking up arms and in violent conflict, okay, yeah, you're probably right. Where we are right now is folks who we disagree with are winning elections that, one, we should win, and two, our approach is not helping us win. Because instead of being, hey, how can I pull some of y'all who are open to maybe doing things differently, how can I pull you over into my camp? We're like, we don't need you. You know, if you're a rhino, if you're a squish, I don't want you here. Failed candidate in Arizona said exactly that. And if you want to be the fighter who doesn't get to govern, then you and I are just going to disagree. And it's not because I think you're wrong on policy. I don't think Matt Walsh is wrong on a lot of policies. He and I are going to agree on policy more often than not. Where we're going to disagree is on the approach, because if the desire is it's to win the insult war, to you say bad things about people like me, so I'm going to say bad things about people like you, that's a different thing than what I'm talking about, which is I want to govern. I want limited government, individual responsibility, the rule of law, these things that matter to be the principles that drive us as a nation. I don't like the let's get control of government and do what we want approach that I see from a lot of the Democrats. I don't like the government is a social weapon for me to do the things in engineering I want. I don't like that. I don't support it. And when I see that from conservatives saying, we're mad, we're going to hit you with government, it makes me uncomfortable, because I'm sort of the big tent, who can I get to agree with me on even one issue type of Republican. I want conservative policies to have the backing so that it's not bare majorities. And somebody said, well, okay, does that make you a libertarian? No, because, for example, I think Hawley's his idea of, hey, we should have some age verifications for minors who are engaging social media, that makes sense to me. Age verifications for pornography makes sense to me. I think having minimum ages for alcohol and tobacco and things like that makes sense to me. That doesn't make me a very good libertarian, but it does show that, hey, government has a role, but it needs to be limited. It needs to be clear. The idea that government does what I want because it's powerful and it can take what it wants is something that I just oppose offhand. And even if you're one of the good guys and say, well, you agree with me, so we can take government and do what I want, I'm still going to tell you no. And we could still agree. I'm just saying that the danger of conceding that argument, that the purpose of government is to get what I want, is kryptonite for conservatives. It is a bad way to go. And I understand it might feel good, but if we're going to do the feelings game, then why are my feelings any more valid than the feelings of Democrats and liberals who want to have government that takes my money from my work and gives it to people who don't? Well, they feel that socialism is a great idea. I don't. But if we reduce it to the feelings game, it is a bad idea. And I think that I get it. I understand being upset, and I don't blame anybody for being upset at the way government is operating, at the way our political class is operating. I get that, and I respect that, and I want you to understand that that's valid, but then get what you want. Get the government you want. Be able to win those elections. Let's talk about how we do that and how we go forward, rather than let's talk big. I don't care. Talk's cheap. Actions speak. What are you going to do to win? What are you going to do to get the things you care about? You care about what's being taught in schools. What are you going to do to win that school board? You care about what's happening at the border. Who are you going to get in office that's going to actually do something about it instead of talk about it? I mean, a lot of these problems aren't new problems. It's just that we have a political class and politicians that just like to yah-yah all the time. And when we say a good politician is the one that's the loudest, then that's what we get, right? We get politicians who say a lot of things that we're like, see, fearless fighter. That person went on Fox News or MSNBC or whatever, said a lot of really good things. But what did they do? That's the thing that I want to know. What did they do? And that's what matters to me. That's what matters to my family. I don't care that you tell me that Joe Biden's terrible on inflation. I care that you have policies that can reduce inflation that Democrats don't. That matters to me. That matters to my grocery bill. Otherwise, we're just sort of like having a feeling session. And if you want me to tell you your feelings are good, like, okay, but it doesn't really matter. And so I'm simply saying we shouldn't let ourselves get into that outrage game because it benefits one group of people, politicians. It enables them to just sort of tickle our outrage and not actually do anything. So it's fine to be angry. Not the problem. It's letting it fester, letting that be something that drives us, getting into this mindset of like, we got to burn them, they burn us. It's more like, why are we paying attention to them? Why are we so focused on the other guy as opposed to how do we get people to our cause, our policies, our ideas, and move it? That's how you win. And I want to win a whole lot more than we've been winning lately. I don't know. Some of you, I hope, agree with me and don't want to keep being losers. And I know that's hard to hear, but the idea of, well, we just keep doing the same thing over and over. Democrats win. Democrats, well, they cheat. I don't care. We got to figure out how to win. I got to figure out how to get folks who run for office that have broad enough appeal to win in the general elections. And if you just want to tell me, well, it's all rigged, it's not, I can't help you. That's not fair. You know, you want me to agree with you, but does it make you feel better? And if you say we're never going to win again, Republicans are never going to win again. Well, what do you want me to do with that? You know, I see this right here on the super text line, 615-737-9886. Well, when you cheat in strategic places, you're never going to win again. Okay, then we're done. It's just over. I disagree. And I also disagree with this notion of this let's get along attitude in governing. I'm going to find my majorities and we're going to go. It's not the, oh, well, hey, you get yours, I get it's. Hey, this is how Americans decide controversial issues. We get majorities and we run with them. And yeah, guess what? We need to remember that how we behave when we have the majority will come back and bite us. Just ask Ilhan Omar. Ask folks that aren't on committees right now because of Democrats deciding, well, this is now a thing. So we do need to think about it, but nobody is suggesting we should just kind of let bygones be bygones. Let's, put on our sweaters and enjoy the nice weather. I'm simply saying that I want to actually win the issues. I want to get the majorities, come up with the policies, push them through. That's how you win. That's winning in the political space. Winning isn't about your feelings. As an Alabama fan, I watched the feelings that Tennessee enjoyed from beating us in basketball recently, ruining our perfect SEC run, but beating us on the football field. But you know what? It wasn't about their feelings. It was about the score. Alabama didn't do what it needed to do to win. And the Vols really enjoyed that. They got the feelings because they did it where it mattered. If you just want to feel like the Vols win, as an Alabama fan, I'd prefer that. But focus on the right thing. The Vols did, and they won. Big, big deal. And so that's what I'm trying to say in the political space is don't focus on the wrong thing. Focus on the right thing to get the outcome that you ultimately want. And if you do that, you're going to get outcomes that make it worth your time. Right now, it's just, I hate the whole thing. Everything's a lost cause. Politicians are terrible. Nobody likes anybody. And I will concede that what's happened, particularly in the Republican Party, is we had a lot of folks that did nothing for a long time, that weren't very interesting, didn't really push policy, just kind of hung out. And if a politician can't tell you what they've advanced that's good for you and your family, get a new one. Conservatives should not be sitting here clapping for any politician. They work for us. You can be kind to them. You should be respectful of the offices that they hold. But at the end of the day, ask for an example. Say, tell me, just, I get the Biden's bad. I get that we have these crises. I get it. But you're Republican. I voted for you. What have you done? What's the thing that benefited my family, my community? How have you represented us well? You should ask that question at least every year of the politicians that elect you. And just kind of keep a little tally. And if you get to the end of a Congress, 2 years, and they don't really have an answer, go find somebody else. But we keep saying, hey, let's get more of the same, more of the same, more of the same, more of the same. And then we're like, but I don't like where it's going. I mean, it's kind of on us. And I hate it. But again, I've been talking about some of these issues going before the Planning Commission in the city of Nolensville, and it really opened my eyes to how some of the stuff goes down on the local level where it does matter. We need to start paying attention to some of that stuff. I appreciate all y'all texting in and engaging the conversation. That is awesome, and that does make a difference. Again, Super Talk text line 615-737-9986. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. All right. Well, that's the serious music. I like it. I want to get a couple of points. First of all, when I said you can't fight fire with fire, I knew somebody was going to bring it up. You can indeed have controlled burns. That happens all the time. Forestry folks do it. My friends who have land they hunt on, they clear out the brush that way. You know what it is? It's intentional. It's not random, reactive. We're just going to burn stuff. Let's just go set stuff on fire and see what happens. It's very intentional with a specific goal in mind. So the analogy still holds. Yes, you can fight fire with fire, but it's very specific and the application is quite limited. When a fire truck rolls up to your house, typically they don't dump gas on it. Typically they don't just say, well, let's see if we can stop this by burning it more. And I think that's where we need to be thoughtful. And the quote that the Hannah Cox quote, for those who are kind of out missing it, it says, conservatives keep getting their butts handed to them in the popular vote in the culture. And then they're like, we know, let's be meaner and get the government more involved in people's personal lives. That'll win the day. And I think that's a sentiment we have to contend with. We have to kind of figure out, okay, what's our response to that? Well, they're mean too. Okay. You got to give me a little bit more than that. And I want to put this to bed because I really do want to focus on some of the local politics stuff in the next hour. But know your audience, know your goal, know what you want. Most of us don't know what we want from the political class other than here's what I don't like. So I want more of things I do like and less of things I don't. Well, guess what? Whoever your elected official is, Bill Haggerty, Marsha Blackburn, Andy Ogles, Bill Lee, what do you want from them? Seriously, tell me. What is it that you want? What would be good for your family, good for your community, good for our future that they can do that's their responsibility, and then hold them to that. And if they don't deliver the goods, move on. Just move on. We don't need to reward them for tough talk. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7. Come back for the last hour.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. U.S. officials say Navy crews have retrieved the payload debris from the China balloon shot down this month. National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby today briefing reporters on what's next.
They did finish their recovery operations off the Carolina coast. They got almost all, at least that which was recoverable, and it's quite a bit. It's a significant amount, including the payload structure as well as some of the electronics and the optics. And all that's now at the FBI laboratory in Quantico.
A major packaging company will pay a hefty fine for employing dozens of minors in hazardous positions at meat facilities in 8 states.
The U.S. Labor Department says Wisconsin's Packers Sanitation Services had children from 13 to 17 years old using razor-sharp saws and other hazardous equipment. Many of them worked overnight shifts at more than a dozen meat processing plants in 8 states. The government forcing that company to pay more than $15,000 for each minor child they hired. The total, more than $1.5 million in fines.
ABC's Andy Field. In Ohio, officials say they're focusing on containment, cleanup, and ensuring safe air and drinking water following the chemical train derailment in East Palestine more than 2 weeks ago. A day after EPA Administrator Michael Regan visited the derailment site, he says his agency will hold Norfolk Southern Rail accountable.
We will use all of our oversight and enforcement authority to be sure that Norfolk Southern is on the hook for the full cleanup and reimbursement of this community.
Federal and state officials have been testing the water and soil and air. Ohio's governor says that recent testing shows there's no contamination in the air and municipal water due to the derailment, but recommends people who rely on well water to actually drink bottled water as they continue those tests. You're listening to ABC News.
I am Kate Gibson, and I hope I don't regret starting a weekly podcast with my father, Charlie Gibson.
Thanks, kiddo. On our new ABC audio podcast, The Bookcase with Kate and Charlie Gibson, we will have conversations with our favorite new and established writers, as well as book lovers and booksellers.
There's nothing more delicious than spoon-feeding yourself every word of a wonderful novel.
New episodes of The Bookcase with Kate and Charlie Gibson are posted every Thursday.
It's the last hour. Time flies when you're having fun. And some of you, Anthony, asked, is Murphy writing stuff on a poster board for you to say? I'm not even sure Matt can write. I mean, he's sitting over there drawing a picture of, is that a puppy or a hip? I don't know. Anyway, it's fine. It gets weird over here sometimes. But we are having fun. And I want to appreciate all of you who have chimed in on this discussion. 615-737-9986, Super Talk text line. I think that we're getting somewhere. And I don't think that being forceful or direct makes you a jerk. What makes you a jerk is when you're insulting, condescending, that you treat people with disdain. You know the difference, right? We teach our kids this. Stand up for yourself. Stand and deliver. Make your argument. But when you start going into personal attacks, that's different, right? And I think that's kind of what I'm getting at is don't be a coward. Don't be somebody who's going to shy away and sort of let somebody have a terrible policy position and say, oh, that's fine because I don't want to fight with you. Fight. Let's go. But let's go where it matters. I don't want you to be distracted. I've worked in politics. I've worked in the House. I've worked in the Senate. I've been in think tanks, and I've worked with state legislators all over the country on public policy issues. And I can tell you the single biggest challenge is we get distracted about things that don't matter to the objective. It's, well, we want to talk tough. We want to play the game. We want to win Twitter. Congratulations. No one cares. And so we end up buying these distractions. The political class wins, and the rest of us suffer. We keep doing the same thing, and we wonder what's going on. Well, what's going on is we kept playing the game. We kept focusing on the things that didn't matter, so the things that did matter got neglected, and politicians got away with it. We shouldn't let that happen anymore. If we want limited government, individual responsibility, rule of law, a freer society that has less of the heavy hand of government in it, we need to live like that. We need to focus on that priority and not, well, somebody had a cool hot take. Ooh, burn. Doesn't matter. What does matter is local government. And oh my goodness, wow. So my neighborhood has an out-of-state developer who frankly has bigger projects and doesn't really care about us. We're trying to finish it out, but basically neighborhood's filled up. We got all our residents, but the developer's in charge of the HOA, wants the city to say, you've done everything you said you would do, and leave them alone. That's not the case. The developer has some obligations that they need to fulfill. That's our argument. And so I was recruited to go talk to the Nolensville Planning Commission. I know, get excited, right? I went, and I want to say that the commissioners who are appointed by the elected officials in the town of Nolensville actually did a pretty good job. I mean, they are citizen servants. They're there to try to make sure that folks are protected, that things are fair. I was actually really impressed with them. But man, when it came to the town staff, who were supposed to be sort of checking things out, they felt very much in the tank for the developer and asked simple questions. For example, if you drive past my neighborhood in Nolensville, there's a lot of erosion in the front by the side of the road. I'm sure y'all have seen this kind of thing. These guys, the town folks, the staff, are supposed to check this kind of stuff. And the guy who's responsible for this couldn't even say that who had said he'd been in our neighborhood for 2 hours, could not even comment on whether or not the front of the neighborhood had severe erosion, which it does. It's apparent from driving past it. And it just sort of struck me man, if you don't pay attention to this stuff, a lot can happen under your nose that's not good. That's not a conspiracy. It's you gotta pay attention. And I appreciate the public service that are willing to serve, but they're relying on staff and folks that work for these towns and cities who are of varying quality. Some folks are excellent. But for example, in the Planning Commission meeting, it was talking about a complicated issue between a developer bond and a performance agreement. And they asked the town council, well, what does this mean? And the town council, who's a young attorney, I'm sure a perfectly nice gentleman, basically was the answer to Matt's point that he made earlier is, when you don't know, just say you don't know. Say, I need to get back to you on that. But true to form in government, everything was at the last minute, and it was high pressure, high stakes. And it made me realize we can spend the time on Twitter and being upset about the other stuff, but we really need to pay attention to what's happening in our own backyard. For example, I'm going to talk about a burrito truck. Get excited. D-Rose Burritos. So this is a family that I coached their son in football, invested in a cook. I want to just say something. I do not get paid by D-Rose Burritos in Nolensville. I know the family that invested, and I've eaten their food, and it is delightful. It was very delightful coming out of wrestling practice at the Nolensville Historical Society and eating a burrito out of a food truck. My position on food trucks that I just want people to understand is, as long as they comply with basic health regulations so that, like, there's not random bugs and insects in my food. As long as a property owner says, hey, you can park here, then they can park there, and it's fine. But they were forced to move. And so this is a great burrito opportunity. And when you have a great burrito opportunity, you should take it. I mean, I have found this is the second great burrito truck that I have found in my life. And I'm talking great burrito, not just okay burrito. But because of bureaucracies, they're forced to move. You can't be in one place regularly for these reasons. I'm like, a good elected officials will figure out how to get to a yes on a lot of this stuff. If the community wants it and they're like, hey, this is cool. But the people that pay attention to this kind of stuff are the ones that are just cranky and against progress and change. They're like, well, what if your food truck that's there parked in a parking lot with other cars, what if it's an eyesore? It's not an eyesore, it's a food truck. It's where you go get food. Nobody's driving through Nolensville and being like, it's a great place to live except for that burrito truck over there. That's not the case at all. And it's figuring out this type of stuff. And thankfully, the free market's figured this out. The Gathering Place Event Lounge for my folks over in Nolensville, that's where that food truck's going to be from 10 o'clock to 8 o'clock tonight. And this kind of thing is really what we got to deal with, right? It's not, well, Joe Biden did a thing. We got to deal with that. That's true. It's the thing that nobody's paying attention to. Like, why are you making it hard for people in our community to deliver tasty burritos to the community? If somebody has a place for them to park and says, hey, it's fine, you can park here, why do we want to make it complicated and difficult? We had the issue in my neighborhood where my neighbors were like, it's really convenient when we come home from work if we can just like pick up food from a food truck. But the city itself made everything complicated. The goal for conservative politicians, and frankly all politicians, is to have the least oppressive government possible. So if you can find ways to get government out of the way, you should. Derek Adams, mayor over in Nolensville for a long time, libertarian type, kind of the new wave, new politicians. I need to see some new politicians getting rid of the bureaucratic garbage and getting the right answers for the folks that live around and letting them be free, letting them live their lives. I want them to vote with their dollars, not their just, I don't like a thing, and so I want to use government to get what I want. And I understand that makes people mad. They're like, well, there's a new development coming into town, and I only wanted the development that allowed me to live here. But new development that allows other people to live here, that is taking away the charm. And I know I'm stepping on some toes here for my Nolensville friends, but this is playing out in Brentwood, Crossville. Go figure out anywhere around here. If you can hear the sound of my voice somewhere, it's these kind of little bureaucratic nyanya stuff that happens everywhere. Oh, by the way, D-Rose is donating a percentage of the proceeds to the fire department in Nolensville, which was also a big deal that we needed a fire department. So we got that, and now we're supporting it. So we should support this thing that supports our firemen. I'm very much in favor of that. But the point is, you have to pay attention. I wasn't, right? I didn't think this was a big deal. Like, oh man, it's a planning commission, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, I'm there and I'm like, whoa, this is the blind leading the blind. There are my community members on this commission trying to serve and help, but man, they don't have a lot to work with. That's a big problem. And then when you look at the city level and something as simple as a food truck, give me a break. And that's where we find ourselves. We're upset about the things that don't really matter and that are distractions, and the things that do matter, we're just walking away from. We're like, oh, that's not, I did like that burrito. I wonder where it went. Well, bureaucracy. That's where it went. So now you're looking all over the place for, I knew a tasty burrito would be in one place. Now it's not in the right place. And I want to make sure that we hold our officials accountable if they're the ones that are causing that. And that's hard. I've got Herman from Nashville talking about food trucks. Herman, what you got?
I've been in the restaurant business for 50 years, and I think I'd just like to give you a little perspective on that because I've been on both sides. I've had a food truck for one of the companies I had, and then also have been in brick and mortar.
Sure, tell me about
it. So I think the rub comes if you build a restaurant, you're probably going to put $1 to $2 million in it, and you build a food truck, you're going to spend $50,000. And so, for the people who have made a large investment to come into the community, then to have a food truck, and they're all different qualities of food trucks as far as appearance and everything else. It's kind of like everybody and develop the area, but I'm going to slide in front of a food truck and take part of your sales. I think there is on both sides.
So to take part of your sales, or are those the customers? Because at the end of the day, is it government's job to come in here and protect an incumbent industry?
It's according to how much tax they want them to pay. That's part of the responsibility. You're going to pay taxes, and we're going to take care of the roads, and we're going to require you to put in plants and landscaping and all this because we want our community to look really nice. And so I make all that investment, and then I'm a Chipotle, let's say. I've never worked for them.
Sure.
And then a food truck comes rolling in right next to a Chipotle with no investment, no taxes. I do see that is not consistent with being fair, and that those people should have to pay their fair share of taxes. They're going to roll in as a food truck. And when I tried to take a food truck in, they just wouldn't even consider it. They said it's so new that we don't know how to manage this really because we've got to protect the people who've come in and complied with all of our requirements and restrictions and codes.
So should taxis, for example, when Uber comes along, we should have government protect the taxis because, they've done the taxi thing, right?
Well, I don't know if that's the same thing.
Yeah, so I appreciate your call, Herman. I mean, I think that makes sense. And he's not wrong about you need to have consistent standards, right? But the fact that I choose to invest $50,000 versus $2 million, I mean, as long as I'm complying with the same health standards and I'm doing the accounting and making sure that I'm paying what taxes are owed and that sort of thing, that's fine. And if the market says, I actually really love these burritos more than I love another brick and mortar restaurant's product, I mean, doesn't the market get to decide that? I mean, that makes sense to me. And so I get it that you make an investment and you want to be there, but you're also the definition of level playing field to me matters a lot. Is it we're customer focused and we're making sure that the health and safety standards are consistent, that the same sort of sales, taxes and things like that are being paid? Okay, that's fine. I can support that. I can get behind that. If it's I'm not going to let you park in the same space because I want to protect the Mexican restaurant around the corner. No dice. Not buying. Not playing that game. And I understand. Like, I get that. And if the issue is the food truck is such a threat to your business, well, this is the argument about Uber, right? And Lyft and ride sharing is, this is terrible. Like, we can't have this. You know what they're really saying? And I fought these battles. Was we don't want competition. We don't want a disruptor. We don't want somebody that does it different. We want to use government to crowd out competition because our business model is not as efficient as theirs. Okay. If you want to make that, you can make that argument, but it's not a very conservative one. And the idea that this is not, well, food trucks are like, will make you sick or something. That's just not fair either, because they do have to have inspections. They do pay taxes. The idea that somehow you're exempt from taxes because you're on wheels, well, that's just not true. And so I want to make sure that the playing field's level and that we're not just having a needless bureaucracy, because you know what? I like things in our community. I like having different options. I also like taking breaks because we have to. And we're going to do that right now. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
update you on the Tyre Nichols case out of Memphis and some crime right here in Nashville. That and more, 2 o'clock, 2:30, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Apparently, McMorey is lost in a time warp, and it's about 2:30 for those of you who lost a half hour. I just want you to know.
Well, you know, I was supposed to be ready to go at 2 o'clock, but a certain producer may or may not have messed that up. So
hey, you know what? When we can manipulate time, we're doing radio right. I just want you to know that.
That's it.
So I want to get back to the topic of food trucks and the fact that I am for competition. I will not apologize for that. I think that if somebody wants to roll up in a food truck next to your brick and mortar, like, you should have a better product. And that food truck will leave because nobody's going to show up. And on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986, good point. Somebody said, if you like places that you can actually go and sit down that are brick and mortar, you have to protect those businesses as well, or you'll have nothing but food trucks. It's not always pleasant to stand out in front of a food truck and order in the middle of winter. No, it's not. It's not at all. But if I want to eat a tasty burrito and it's cold outside, I got choices to make because I'm a consumer, and that's what we should, particularly as conservatives, want to do, is empower consumers to make choices. So I can go to the lovely restaurant alternatives. Me and Loretta's, great restaurant in Nolensville. I can go there and sit down. Wade can give me a great sandwich and great conversation, and it's awesome. But that's a choice I want to make, right? And if a food truck is parked in the parking lot, I can decide, do I want to go in there where it's nice and warm and they have great sandwiches, or to this food truck that has great burritos, but I'm going to kind of have to stand outside or eat in my car. And as a consumer, I'm totally capable of that. And if a restaurant's argument is, I'm always going to lose to the food truck, then I think the answer is the market has spoken. People lie all the time. They rarely lie with their money. And so my family, we eat a lot at home. We go out. We find some great places. We like them. We sit down there. Sometimes we do food truck. Like, consumers have a lot of choices and have a lot of options, and that's good. That's how free markets work. The moment that you say, well, we must protect this industry because if we don't, they will go away. You know what? It may be time for them to go away. And I don't believe that about brick and mortar restaurants. They're not going anywhere. People like to be able to sit down. But the idea that, well, that means they can't have competition, give me a break. And what I think this goes back to is, this is a little thing, right? But y'all are pretty keyed up on the Super Talk text line about food trucks versus brick and mortar restaurants. Why? Because it actually impacts you. We'll finish up this conversation when we come back. I want to talk about a little bit about some of how Fox News folks felt privately about election fraud claims. That's come out. That's actually kind of interesting. So we'll finish this up, get to that one, chat a little bit more, and we'll close it out. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
31 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 35 degrees. Going to be a lot cooler today. We warned you of that yesterday as all the storms were coming in. It was going to be welcomed with a cold front. Well, here it is. It'll be chilly here tonight and this weekend. Some possible flurries, but no significant impactful accumulations of any winter effects happening. Weather and traffic coming up in just a few minutes. Starting in Memphis, where the 5 fired police officers charged with murder and other crimes in the death of Tyre Nichols pled not guilty to all charges in their first court appearance today. Brian Clark brings us the story.
Tyre Nichols' mother, Rovon Wells, said none of the 5 officers would look her in the eye.
They didn't even have the courage to look at me in my face. after what they did to my son.
Family attorney Ben Crum said after the hearing that community rumors that Nichols was involved with the significant other of one of the officers were bogus and untrue.
What we want to remain laser focused on is getting justice for Tyree Nichols.
Those 5 officers remain free on bond. The next hearing is scheduled for May 1st.
And over here in Nashville with a crime story, News 2 says that a man on parole in Nashville was arrested on drug charges. Officials conducted a search warrant at 34-year-old Lamont Harris's home, and they found 1.5 pounds of meth, 42 grams of crack cocaine, both of which tested positive for fentanyl. And with that, they found a stolen gun and around $8,500 in cash. Harris now faces multiple felony drug and gun charges. He's being held in the Metro Jail in lieu of a $215,000 bond. Police said the state is expected to soon file a parole violation against him, and Harris received a 9-year sentence in 2018 for a felony heroin conviction. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
That's nice, Belle. It's nice and chill. It's a good way to close it out. Feeling good about that one. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on the Matt Murphy Show. I think Red on the Super Talk text line kind of sums it up best. That as long as the health standards are there and they're paying taxes for what they do, then we should let people compete. We just should. Don't make me go like, find the burrito. It's a weird thing. Like, hey, if we should be maximally flexible within the confines of, hey, here's some basic guardrails. Like, that's what government should be like, right? Setting some safety standards. That's kind of where we are. Here's the basic guardrails. Go compete. And if you're telling me that your overhead is very expensive in Nolensville, yes, it is. And so the question is, well, are consumers willing to pay $17 for a taco at a restaurant in Nolensville that's brick and mortar to keep up with the prices? The answer is probably not. So that's a business decision. We made this brick and mortar thing for consumers, and we pay way too much in rent. And so to make it, we've got to charge exorbitantly high prices. And that's the reason a lot of places go out of business. I like Steven's suggestion that it's like, well, find a way to partner with the food trucks. Like, serve as their commissary. Be able to, like, develop and evolve. That's how capitalism works, folks. And that's actually encouraging and positive. It's a little thing like food trucks, but this is the mindset we need. And it's how to grow, how to move forward, not how do I keep my piece of a shrinking pie. Grow the pie, man. Make it bigger. In fact, that sounds great too. How about a food truck that has pies? Like, awesome. Great idea. Make it happen. That's how capitalism needs to work. And I think that that's really, it's a win. And for my beloved town of Nolensville, let's kind of keep the bureaucracy to a minimum. Let's do what we can. And if you're hearing this and you're in other towns, let's try to figure this out. Let's keep the bureaucracy to a minimum. And do I feel the same way about that in downtown Nashville as I feel in Nolensville? You betcha. Keep the bureaucracy to a minimum. Create reasonable guardrails. Expect people to play by the same standards, but they'll make different business decisions. Some will work, some won't. That's okay. That's capitalism. The moment that I start saying, well, government, we want things to be this way, so government needs to fix it. Government needs to make it so. Government is run by people who won a popularity contest. It's not run by people whose livelihood depends on the success of their decisions. If it did, we'd have a much better government. As it is, government has a limited function, and it needs to be limited. It needs to leave the rest of it up to the people who are trying to put their money where their mouth is and make good calls with their dollars, believing that, hey, you're going as a consumer to make decisions to like their stuff because they did a good job delivering good product to you. D. Rose Burritos, again, they don't pay me. They just have good burritos. It's worth your time. And so that's how the market works, right? Because now I'm just voluntarily telling you about this because I like the people and I like the food. And in a town like Nolensville, that's how we roll. You know what? We hang out at the Sonic. We like the Sonic. Like, that's where there's a lot of social stuff that happens there. It's where kids meet up after games. Like, you know, we don't always have the best behavior sometimes, but we're getting that in line too. And that's America, folks. That's great. I am super excited about that. And I think what happens is sometimes folks get a little lost in the shuffle and they say, no, I need to make the world as I want it to be because, well, I want it that way and I'm right. And so I'm going to use government. And don't do that. Don't fall into that trap. Whether it's food trucks or it's the federal government, I don't care. Don't fall into the trap of I should get what I want through force of government. You should reject that every chance you get because that's how you grow government. It becomes a powerful tool and then you use it. And then somebody else comes in and says, I want to use it differently. All right, Cindy's been waiting. I think it's fair. Cindy, what you got on food trucks?
Yes. Hi. How are you today?
I'm great.
Well, my husband and I run a food truck called Jodine's Eats and Treats.
Okay.
We're out of War Trace, Tennessee.
Okay.
And we pay fees for every county we go into.
Okay.
We've got expense on our trailer, on our vehicle that pulls it, and we have to be inspected everywhere we go. So I was just going to reiterate that, yes, we do pay the proper taxes and the proper fees for each place that we go to. And also, if you go into a county, you pay a certain fee in that county. But if you go into the city limits, then there's another fee tacked on to that.
Sure. I mean, and that's unfortunately the bureaucracy that you have to deal with. To a degree, I think that's okay. In terms of, what's your experience in terms of, do you feel like consumers respond favorably to you going to where they are? Or are you saying, well, maybe I should do brick and mortar? What do you think?
No, we're pretty much loved in our area where we serve our community, and we love them. We try to serve the best product that we can serve. It's mostly all homemade. My husband makes the ice cream that we serve, and we make Sloppy Joe sliders and hot dogs and homemade chicken salad sliders and walking tacos.
Well, I'm excited, and thank you for calling in. I really do appreciate that, Cindy, and that also makes me hungry. A couple of things on the Super Talk text line that I want to address immediately. The ultimate buy in China guy. Oh, so the food truck in Nolensville that's run by a family in Nolensville is for China? Really? I don't think so. And this, well, maybe you don't understand the food. My family, particularly my wife's family, they had their own food restaurant. They ran a restaurant called Zelby's in New Jersey. And they have told me the great stories, the painful stories. I understand the dynamics and what's going into that. And I understand the investment and risk and stake of a brick and mortar. Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that that's meaningless. I'm simply saying that by and large, those are choices in a business model, and you want a return on investment. And if you want to get that return, sell a product at a price point that attracts a lot of customers. If you want government to keep competitors away from you, that's a very different model. And I understand why you'd want that. Everybody would. If I can use government to stop somebody from competing with me. This was the argument, and my experience with this is heavily in the public policy space. I worked for think tanks where I dealt with a lot of like local regulations related to alcohol, related to what's called disruptive technology, like a Uber or Lyft. They come into the market and it's sort of like, well, we don't like this. How do we know it's okay? We got to just stop it. Let's just stop it. Well, what they really mean is we don't want to have to compete with these guys because they got a better model. Well, if you look now at the marketplace, taxis still exist because there's some advantages that taxis enjoy that you can just wave your hand and there's a car there. That's great. But they now compete and they're with Uber and Lyft, and a lot of the costs and things have actually come down in favor of the consumer. I call that a win. I call it capitalism. And I understand that everybody doesn't like capitalism all the time, especially if you're on the losing end of competition. Especially if you're in a market where rent is really high, you're paying very high fixed costs that you can't necessarily pass on to your customers. And I understand that in Nolensville. I mean, but the answer isn't rent control. It isn't, well, the rent for these restaurants is too high and so that we can't, that's not sustainable, it doesn't work. The answer is, well, the rent's too high. And that means either somebody else is willing to pay that, and that's the business that gets the spot, or the rent has to come down so that the food prices can be fair and the market works. That's how that works. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong about that. But these are the discussions I want to have. I want to have them with the listeners here because they happen everywhere. But at my home, in Nolensville, it matters. Like, these are the local discussions we need to have. We don't need to be angry. We don't need to go punch each other. We don't need to cut the tires on the food truck. We should support local. That means the brick and mortar. It means the food trucks. It means, hey, we care about what's here and what's in our community. And I'll tell you, with my family, every time if I have an opportunity to go somewhere that's not a chain, even if I have to pay a little bit more, I show up because I want to be there for my community. And so I'm not trashing brick and mortar restaurants. You frequent them and appreciate them. They should still have to compete. And I'm going to help them compete because they're my friends and community members and people I want to do really, really well. And we talk about that all the time. You see it on the message boards and things like that of, are you buying local? Are you going to these places to keep them in business? And you should, because that's how markets work. But the protectionist government stuff, I will not play ball on because I'm a conservative, and that's what we do. Unfortunately, my friend Brendan Cam of Thanks, I work at Thanks and love the team there, was not able to join us today because I promised we were going to talk about the impacts of appreciation on chronic pain. I'll close out with that. We'll talk about a little bit of that because it shocked me. I thought it was really interesting. I appreciate you hearing me on the discussion about food trucks and capitalism because I think it's an important one. I think we get lost, again, on the things that are distracting and miss the important priorities that are close by. Thankfully, Matt Murphy has given me an opportunity to fill in for him on Super Talk 99.7.
The 5 Memphis police officers in the Tyre Nichols case plead not guilty, and White House spokesman John Kirby today previewing President Biden's trip to Poland. That and more at 3. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, we're back. Excuse me. For the final time. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy, and I've really enjoyed it today. You guys have been great. I mean, awesome to work with on the Super Talk text line. Matt is going to fill in for Brian on the drive, and man, he's got a doozy of a show for you. I'm very excited about that, and I'll listen in on the way home. The CG writes in on the Super Talk text line, you'd probably like getting your meat out of the back of a truck instead of going to the store. Hey, you got a good deal on a bone-in ribeye? I'll take it. And he also said, at any point, food trucks can move locations due to the profit. Well, that's the business model. It's kind of the point. If you're somewhere where there's no customers, you should move to where there are customers. Said every business in America for all time. So I hear you. I think this is an interesting discussion. I did want to be fair, because when I say I want to get to something, I'd want to try to do it. My buddy Brendan Cam, who runs Thanks, where I work, and great company, y'all should check it out, was going to come on and talk a little bit about how important it is to be appreciative and the health impacts of that. Just writing down things that you're thankful for. I think that that's something, I'll have him on the show next time I host, and we'll get him in here to talk about it a little bit more, but that's something that I want to substitute for the outrage. Appreciation, right? What are you appreciative for? I'm appreciative for my town. Love Nolensville. Love it. The people, the food, the brick and mortar stores, food trucks, all of it. Love it. And when you're appreciative, that changes your outlook, changes everything about your life. And I said we would get to that. So we got to it. We just didn't give it as much time as I would have liked to. We're going to have to get to the Fox News privately bashing the election fraud claims later. That's a fun one. Check that out. There's great coverage on it right now. Sidney Powell is lying, by the way. I caught her. It's insane, Tucker Carlson wrote in a message to Laura Ingraham. The court filing shows. I've had a great time today. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on The Matt Murphy Show.
O'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories right now. 35 degrees, going to be a chillier night, possible flurries, but no actual winter accumulation expected tonight. Weather traffic coming up just a few minutes. Starting in Memphis, where the 5 fired police officers charged with murder and other crimes in the death of Tyre Nichols pled not guilty today to all charges in their first court appearance. Brian Clark has the story.
Tyre Nichols' mother, Rovon Wells, said none of the 5 officers would look her in the eye.
They didn't even have the courage to look at me in my face after what they did to my son.
Family attorney Ben Crump said after the hearing that community rumors that Nichols was involved with a significant other of one of the officers were bogus and untrue.
What we want to remain laser focused on is getting justice for Tyre Nichols.
Those 5 officers remain free on bond. The next hearing is scheduled for May 1st.
In the nation's capital, White House spokesman John Kirby today previewed President Biden's upcoming trip to Poland, saying Biden's main message will be continued support from the U.S. in the face of Russian aggression.
The 2 leaders will discuss Poland's important logistical role as well in helping the U.S. facilitate deliveries of military and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine from not only the United States, but from our allies and partners. The President will also have a chance to thank Poland for how they have hosted now an increased number of U.S. forces, including those that are permanently stationed and those who were deployed to Europe as part of our force posture adjustments, the ones that we announced last year following Russia's invasion.
Back here in the Volunteer State, Fox 17 says that a man, 38-year-old Wesley Darwin Walls, is now dead after getting shot by an officer. This took place in Dixon County last night. Right now, the investigation shows that officers were reporting to a call of a suicidal man. They showed up, and Walls was pointing a gun at the officers. That prompted one of them to shoot and kill him. Walls died at Dixon Hospital after that shooting. Neither of the officers were hurt. And 4 U.S. service members and a working dog are receiving treatment at a medical facility after being wounded in a mission that targeted and killed a senior ISIS leader yesterday. Em Nguyen has more.
During a partnered U.S. and Syrian Democratic Forces helicopter raid in northeastern Syria targeting ISIS senior leader Hamza al-Hamzi, an explosion wounded 4 U.S. service members and 1 working dog. Al-Hamzi was killed in the mission. The U.S. service members and working dog, who are also members of the U.S. Special Operations Forces, are receiving treatment in a U.S. medical facility in Iraq.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
All right, kids, here we are. Here we go. It is indeed The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. No Brian Wilson today. Matt Murphy in for Brian on this Friday, February the 17th, 2023. I'll be in for Brian today. I'll be in for Brian on Monday as well, as Brian is off for President's Day Monday, and I guess just a free-for-all Friday today. Happy to have you along for the ride, whatever amount of time you're able to give us. We're certainly appreciative of that. Hey, Bold Patriot Brewing Company, how are y'all? Doing all right? Yeah, there they are. We already got a little crowd gathered, some of whom know who I am. Others are just confused about the loud man in the corner yelling at them about this, that, and the other thing. Trust me, it'll all make sense to you at some point. Although I've been doing it for 22 years and it hasn't made sense to me yet. So we got a lot to get into and a very busy show. and we'll start here. I'll give you kind of the rundown of what you can anticipate. Give me a little more over there, Kirby. You're hot. Kirby's, thank you. Kirby's hiding my return over there. And Kirby, I just gained 3 pounds based on the incredible. Was that a cinnamon roll? Was that a cinnamon roll that you just had?
It was one of the purest donuts from the
it's incredible. That's so incredible. Yeah.
About 3 inches thick. It was pretty good.
It looked great, and I gained 2 pounds watching you eat it. I gain weight watching Kirby eat. If I eat, Kirby loses weight. As a result, that's his metabolism there. So anyway, you're invited at any point over the next 4 hours to come out and see us. Let me explain where we are, and then we'll get into the meat of the day and some of the issues that we're covering, and we'll have some fun on this First Amendment Freestyle Friday, as I call it. So we are in Ellendale Market. That's on Charlotte Pike. If you go to the back, you'll see the parking lot, and you'll see the big sign, the big, huge painted Bold Patriot Brewing Company logo there on the side of the brick wall. Come on in and see us, and heck, I might buy you a beer. You never know. We're here till 7 o'clock tonight. Charlotte Pike, L&L Market. Bold Patriot, they're so gracious with their time, and for those who can't catch me in my normal slot between noon and 3, I'm normally here toward the end of the month on Fridays, and this time around I had to slide it toward the middle of the month because I am out of pocket next week and weren't able to do it. So